Mark Greaney is back with the 13th novel to feature the Gray Man, Court Gentry. This time, Court squares off against an enemy backed by a soon-to-be autonomous artificial intelligence. Hi, I'm Dan Skinner, and this is Some Books Considered. Today I'll talk with Mark Greaney about the inspiration for this latest novel in this New York Times bestselling series. We'll also discuss the plot of The Chaos Agent and the research that went into the creation of the novel. I requested and was provided with a copy of the book, but this video is not sponsored. A bit about the author. Mark Greaney has a degree in international relations and political science. In his research for this Gray Man series, he's traveled to more than 35 countries and trained alongside military and law enforcement in the use of firearms, battlefield medicine, and close-range combative tactics. The Gray Man story continues with The Chaos Agent. Mark, welcome to Some Books Considered.
Thank you so much for having me.
Mark, for those who may not be familiar with this series of books, tell us about your main character here, the Gray Man.
So his name is Court Gentry. He is a former CIA paramilitary operations officer who then went into the private sector, kind of working as a killer for hire, but only taking jobs that he felt were morally, beneficial to the world. So this is the 13th book in the series, and they're all standalone. You don't need to read them in order. But if you did read them in order, you would see that there's been lots of changes in his life over the 13 years. So his relationship with the CIA now is good. It has been bad at other times. But yeah, he's, this book opens up with him trying to live a quiet, normal life, even though there's a lot of people after him. And of course, that doesn't work. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a 500-page thriller novel. But that's who he is.
And he's trying to live this quiet life with Zoya. Tell us about her. I know her background is complicated, but tell us about her and how the two of them ended up together.
Yeah, so she's a former Russian foreign intelligence officer who was burned by her agency, just like Court was by his. And they met as adversaries, but a bond was created. And he's a character. Court is a guy who joined the CIA when he was 19, was pulled out of prison to do so, and has never really had much in the way of relationships or really the social graces. So this has been fun for me to have these two characters, both of whom are very paranoid, both of whom are on the run, and they have struck up a relationship with one another. So it's kind of fun for the writer to kind of psychologically analyze these people and where they are and what they're doing and how they would react to one another.
And the interesting thing about the two of them, like you said, because they're on the run, they are helping out and, challenging or facing these different challenges, but yet at the same time, they have personal threats against them that they're also dealing with at the same time, which not give a spoiler away, but certainly comes into play in this novel for Zoya in particular. Yeah. But let's talk a little bit about this novel. Was there a particular inspiration for this challenge that you put the two into?
Yes, when I was looking for something to write about, first off, when you write geopolitical thrillers, your villains are oftentimes Russian or Chinese or North Korean or Iranian, and then you circle back and do that again. And I'm always looking for something different. So I was watching these, learning a lot about Elon Musk and other, mega billionaires who have these private artificial intelligence labs, and they do have government contracts, and they are developing really cutting edge stuff in the algorithms, and as well as other people developing the robotics. I just thought a book where obviously it's a spy novel, there's human beings, it's all about human beings, but at the core of it, there's this technology that is emerging. There's nothing in this book that's science fiction. Everything is existing or emerging technology. And I just thought there was a lot of potential for turning that into a very interesting thriller.
And I want to talk to you about some of the research and your thoughts about AI in a moment, but tell us about the plot here. Where are you taking readers this time?
Yeah, so this one starts off with Court and Zoya trying to live a quiet life, and pretty soon they're targeted by this entity, and they through some cat and mouse and globetrotting they realize that this entity is also assassinating the world leaders in the fields of robotics and artificial intelligence. So they work with the CIA to try to uncover this before a revolutionary new autonomous weapon comes online that would completely revolutionize warfare, and give a what they call first mover advantage, an insurmountable tactical advantage to whoever has this weapon.
And I don't know if this gets into spoiler territory or not, but at some point the readers understand the title of the book and who is the chaos agent.
Yeah, it's a little bit. A lot of my titles are sort of double entendre because you think of Court as being an agent for the CIA. Which means he's not an employee of the CIA. He's working on their behalf. But at the same time, this I can say it. This artificial intelligent entity, it's called an intelligent agent, is fomenting chaos, and that's what the book's about.
And the person, again, not to get into too much spoiler territory, but there's a nemesis here who is working with this artificial intelligence, and he has a grand plan for what he wants to do with the world. And of course, it's not good for the world, even though he thinks it is.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's a complete narcissist, obviously a very brilliant person, but at the same time, he feels like that he can make the world a better place by destroying a large chunk of it, sadly. And he's working with and against some of the major world powers, and the technology is not a high tech book. I mean, I do go into a lot of the ethics of artificial intelligence, and I do describe a lot of the lethal autonomous weapons or killer robots that either exist today or versions of them exist today. So, it's all kind of woven together, and there's a bit of a mystery to the story. So it takes a while to unravel what's going on.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about that research, because you said some of this actually does exist, or others, they're evolving. So what do you see based on your research and your knowledge of the military? Where do you see this going in terms of the use of AI and autonomous weapons in military actions?
Well, I don't think it's going anywhere good. The United States, our official policy at this point is that we will always have humans on the kill chain. So the kill chain is a lethal autonomous weapon is a weapon that can, on its own, without any human interaction, search for, discriminate against, identify a target, and then make the decision to kill that target, and then kill that target. And once machines are doing this, they will do it at machine speed, which is thousands of computations a second, whereas the humans can't do that. And China's working very hard on this. So we ethically say, well, America is not going to do this. But the second that China has this first mover advantage and is able to, operate thousands of times faster than we can, we're going to be in some trouble. And just a short little example of that is with fighter planes. There was a simulation done where one of America's best Air Force F-16 pilots went up in a simulator against an artificial intelligence flying another F-16, and the score was 15-0. The human being didn't get one shot off, and described it as his opponent was complete aggression at all times, and he never got behind it to get a single shot off. And so this is, artificial intelligence doesn't have to worry about task saturation or G-forces or things of that nature. So you can just sort of extrapolate that and see where it's going in the future.
And although it sounds like a good idea to have a human in that chain, as you point out, humans are too slow.
Yeah, it's the weak link, sadly. It's the judgment that we want, and hopefully the morality that we need, but it definitely slows down the process.
There's always the problem of, has this thing been programmed correctly? If it's making its own decisions, are those the correct decisions, or is it based on bad information? So it just sounds like there's a lot of potential for things to go wrong.
Yes, and you're right that if it's programmed nefariously, that's bad. The other thing with artificial intelligence, though, is it has the ability to rewrite its own code, and it's called bootstrapping. It can pull itself up by its bootstraps and teach itself using synthetic data. So it does, like this aircraft simulator flew millions and millions of hours, and that's why it was so good, because it did it all in simulation and it did it all, on in the computer. So even if we sort of instill, and there's been many examples of these large language models where you instill something in it um, as a safeguard, and then the computer program will write that safeguard out because it gets in the way of their mission.
So this is the challenge that we face, but also the challenge that the Gray Man and Zoya face as they go up against this. So tell us a little bit more about the research that you had to do to get the details as we know them correct for this novel.
Yeah, so I am not a tech guy at all. Even though I wrote Tom Clancy novels, I did it. I learned what I needed to for the story, and I definitely didn't go as deep into the technology as Tom did back when he was around. So I did a lot of reading. I mean, there's probably about 5 books I read, and one of them I read 3 or 4 times, and I estimate I listened to probably 300 hours of podcasts about artificial intelligence and robotics and ethics and the military. And then I read a bunch of government papers or think tank papers on these different subjects, and just did other research like that. So I did some location research in Central America, but the majority of it was just me trying to read up on this and bone up on this very quickly moving technology.
As you mentioned, this is the 13th novel to feature Court Gentry, and you said he's been through a lot, obviously, in those 13 novels. How would you say that he has evolved over time?
Yeah, so I've always liked characters that have vulnerabilities as well as strengths. I don't like reading a book where the hero's supposedly human, but they're a superhero. So my guy does a lot of amazing, daring feats and incredible things, but he also takes a lot of damage from it, physically and emotionally. So I would say he's evolved in his psychology. He's definitely a more well-rounded person than he was earlier in the series. Early on, he was very, just 100% mission oriented. He was a weapon for the U.S. government, and now he thinks for himself, and he has a relationship that might be somewhat dysfunctional, but it's for him, it's pretty smooth sailing. So it's fun to kind of continue that story arc with the development of him as a character and the other characters who pop in and out of the series. I like to sort of change everybody over time.
And I can see where it's great for him to have Zoya in his life. But on the other hand, in terms of just sheer mission capability, she's an asset, but yes, at the same time, he now has to be concerned about her, and that goes into the decisions he might make in the field.
Absolutely, and she hates that. He feels, like he has a responsibility to her, and she very much feels like he does not. And he's let his walls down for this one person on planet Earth. And early on in the book, there's a situation where he realizes she hasn't told him the truth, and immediately those walls start coming back up, regardless of the fact that he's in love with her, and the last 4 months has been the best 4 months of either of their lives. I just, again, thinking about the psychology of this guy, if he was, an off the grid assassin, living in the developing world, trying to stay alive, and the one person that he confides in and trusts seemingly lets him down. Like how quickly would he react to that, and how aggressively would he react to that? That's all that stuff is really fun to write.
So, Mark, there's a question that I like to ask authors of fiction, and it's this: if you could spend a day in real life with one of the characters in this novel, who would it be and why?
I'm gonna say Court, my hero, Court Gentry, because I think the only way he and I are alike is worldview and sarcasm, things of that nature. Anything that involves him, climbing over a fence and dropping down on the other side, that he and I are not alike at all in that regard. But I've created him as an extension of me as far as worldview. And, it's a fun thing to be a thriller writer and write about contemporary issues, and to be a student of international relations and political science, and to go out and research these things that are really happening and put your character in there. There's some wish fulfillment because, they write, your heroes can right some wrongs that, the real world is more complicated than that. But I'd love to hang out with him because I think he and I would have a lot in common until it came to the jumping off point of combat.
So what's next for you?
Well, the very next book for me is called Sentinel. It's not a Gray Man novel. It's the second book in my Josh Duffy series, and it comes out June 25th. And it's an action adventure. It takes place in Africa, and I just got back from West Africa a couple months ago doing research. And then as soon as I finish my promotion tour for this book, Chaos Agent, I'm going to start working on book 14, so the next Gray Man book, and it'll be out this time next year.
The book is The Chaos Agent by Mark Greaney, and it's the 13th book to feature the Gray Man, Court Gentry. Mark, thank you for talking with me today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
If you'd like to purchase The Chaos Agent, I've placed a link for you in the description below. And if you'd like to see more videos about books and their authors and a wide variety of topics, be sure to subscribe, like, and click on the bell to be notified about future programs. I'm Dan Skinner. Thank you for watching this edition of Some Books Considered.